104.7 The K, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio. It is Dark Side of the Stream episode 208.
Let's go.
This was my pick this week. It was
I look small on my camera. I need to look a little larger like you.
Wake up, get closer. We're going to discuss today a story that was run on Netflix, a three-parter called The Manhattan Alien Abduction, and it tells a story about a woman named Linda Napolitano. Did I say that?
I don't know how to say it. I watched this on the plane, so I had
barely hear
headphones.
It. But it tells a story about a woman who, in the late 80s, was in her high-rise Manhattan apartment, and according to her story, and then some witnesses, which we'll get to in that a little bit, she was captured by a mothership that was flying over Manhattan. They levitated her body out of her room up into the sky.
People saw her levitating.
Supposedly, these witnesses, which, by the way, the guy that was, we'll get into that in a second, but they supposedly had like 12 witnesses that saw her body levitate. And then she was then experimented on and then pushed back into her apartment, where she would then contact a researcher who kind of championed her story around. And then it gets real muddy. And we'll talk about all the mud here in a little bit. But right out of the gate, do you believe her story, Jason?
It's weird because she was on like all the talk shows, Oprah and all that kind of stuff. But I would need, I'm all for hearing out UFO stories.
Yeah.
I would need a little more witnesses or some more verifications on this particular story.
There are, again, the witnesses have never been verified.
Right, that's the weird thing. You got witnesses, okay, then...
The guy saying, I've talked to 12 people that saw it. Okay, well, who are they? Well, I'm not going to name them. Well,
right,
this isn't
that's not a witness.
This wasn't like a guy who was like stolen state secrets of a government, UFO retrieval program. I get why you want to keep that guy's name secret.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
There's a dude named Jay Bananas walking down the street in his new Pumas. And he looks
Little Mo with the gimpy leg.
God, there's some chick. Hey, look at the alien.
I saw it all.
I want to talk to Jay Bananas about
yes.
that situation. And I'm going to tell everyone it was Jay Bananas that told us who saw the UFO. But that's not what happened. But it is an interesting story. I kind of agree with you. You always want to take people seriously when they claim something like this happens. But over time, it just becomes weaker and weaker and thinner.
Yeah, you need
thinner.
a little bit of something.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what that is and what actually happened. All that next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The K. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream, episode 208, The Manhattan Alien
I was a light in the sky. I was making sure they weren't coming to get me.
I would like to go on record and say that I've never been abducted.
Do you know this for a factual?
I mean, as far as I know, I don't have any weird things in my body. I haven't had any kind of weird.
I don't think I've ever been abducted either.
I remember as a child, I had some weird like half sleep dream things happen where I felt like something or someone was in my room kind of situation.
Demons, aliens.
But I've always come back to that. It was just a child imagination. I had really bad insomnia growing up, and maybe it was just like that, or I was dreaming.
Maybe it was Cronky, the early version of Cronky. Conky. Who haunts your child? Conky.
So
I'm gonna pull that Conky card on him.
So anyway, so I never really like thought to myself like, oh my God, I was abducted. It's just like one of those things where I thought, well, it was a weird occurrence. But again, my mom always had some weird kind of alien thing that she said she saw them when she was growing up in Kansas. She had some sort of weird experience.
Really?
Yeah.
We need to get your mom on. There's many times we try to get your mom on.
It's kind of like this woman's story, where you hear something and it's so amazing and crazy, but at the same time, you got to be asking yourself, did you dream all this? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm a very, very lucid dreamer. I do all kinds of stuff in my sleep, and I have very, very lucid dreams. I remember them. Sometimes I don't, but when I do, they're so incredible. It's kind of like we make the joke sometimes between Jay and I about girlfriends that have dreams about you doing something wrong, and then they wake up and they're pissed at you.
And they're mad at me.
And you're like, what are you talking about? Well, that's a great example of how sometimes in our sleep
Can be
and
real.
dreams happen,
Seem real.
we have emotional ties to those, whether they're horrifying and scary and we wake up in a pool of sweat, or just an incredible, awesome dream. When you wake up, you're like, I want to go back to sleep so I can continue.
I had a dream last night. I was with Sebastian Bach.
And he tried so hard to go back to sleep.
I did.
We're not going to talk about what they actually were doing.
We're doing Halloween stuff,
yeah,
dude.
That's what you say. That's not what you said when we were off camera. Anyway, Dark Side of the Stream. We'll talk more about alien abductions and whether or not this lady's story is true next on 104.7 The Cave. Mike, the intern, Jay Stevens, back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream 208, discussing the Manhattan alien abduction. So, okay, back to the story. This woman gets abducted, supposedly. She reaches out and writes a letter to a guy who is a known at the time ufologist. And Bud Hopkins gets this letter, and he talks about, all these things that had happened to her.
Well, this guy was he would do hypnosis on people that were abducted.
Yes.
He had a group of people, he would hypnotize them, regress them, and they would tell these crazy stories, and they look like they're in pain when they're getting stuff shoved up their nose. It was pretty believable.
Yeah, and again, if it was a dream, you would still probably bring those back up too. I don't know though, but anyway, he worked with her and goes around, tries to get the witnesses. They say they had about 20, but then they had 12. In his book that he wrote about this, he used pseudonyms for all of these, but it really is not a whole lot of evidence to corroborate what he's saying. The only thing that they have is the communication between Hopkins and the woman in these letters.
See, that's where, like with fighter pilots and stuff, and these government guys that are seeing them in their jets, they've got radar, they've got visual, they've got stats. That's a little more believable than, hey, yeah, a lot of people saw it with me, but I don't know, they're not going to talk to you. It's like, I don't know. If you and me saw a UFO, I would hope that you would be like, have my back and say, yeah, I saw it. And
you have the security guard guy who said that he never saw anything, even though he was supposedly there when this thing happened. And
it was a big ship over New York, right?
Yeah. Supposedly,
you would think there was a blackout. You would think a lot of people saw it.
And she's saying, like, look, if I hallucinated, all these other people saw my hallucinations too. But if we don't know who those people are and we can't have them corroborate what your story is, and
I don't think it would hold up in court. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. Well, then enter filmmaker Carol Rainey, who dated Hopkins at the time, was married to him, who basically comes into this thing saying, look, this is not good. And at that point, I think Bud had lost all his objectivity. I didn't know if it was through the Linda case or earlier, that I couldn't respect what I'd heard him do to people who were vulnerable and very vulnerable, and try to protect other people being tormented this way. Not a good business model. So she thinks there was some kind of nefarious
thing. She just started filming him, right?
Yeah. And so again, she comes in and claims this stuff, and the mud really starts to stack in. It's one of those situations too, where when you hear abduction stories, and we've done them before, where they're like the couple Unsolved Mystery series ago, where that town had several instances where people had experiences, and they were all based on the timeline, and you could really trace
that was
everyone's experience happened as a thing. That was evidence that was corroborated with witness testimony, and we knew who they were. So that, again, sells that story a little bit better. This one doesn't, in my opinion. But again, the woman is staying by her story, and we'll tell you how she's doing that when we return next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7. Mike, the intern, Jay Stevens, back in the studio one more time. It's Dark Side of the Stream, episode 208 this week, the Manhattan alien abduction. Now, after we picked this documentary and watched it, a lawsuit was brought to court in which the woman who claims she was abducted is now suing the filmmakers of this documentary, claiming that they are essentially saying that everything that she did was false. They were just kind of not, what did they say? The project defames her, paints her in an unflattering light, and steals the work of an author who first wrote about a story more than 20 years ago, which that would be Hopkins' book. And it allows that Carol was allowed to play a prominent role in the docuseries as an expert skeptic in the field, when instead, allegedly, it was an embittered alcoholic ex-wife hell-bent on revenge against her husband.
It got weird, man.
So now we got the alien story. We got these witnesses that are corroborating, and now she's claiming that this woman is just throwing mud on her because she's a pissed off ex-wife. So again, it's like, I don't know. And again, and you said it best yesterday when we were talking about it. You go, it just kind of ends.
Yeah, it kind of ends,
just kind of ends,
and it leaves you to guess
Yeah.
what you think the answer is, or how you think it ends. Who's telling the truth? Odd. I thought maybe that I missed something because I was watching it playing, but no, you saw the same thing. It just kind of ended.
I give this thing probably 2.5.
Yeah, I'll give it a 2.
It was not great.
Didn't do it for me either.
Didn't sell me on anything I didn't know. It more just told about the infighting between a guy trying to prove a woman's thing and her ex-husband and all this, or his ex-wife and all this stuff. That was like, what are we getting into here? But then again, who knows? Until those guys come up and like, hey, I saw this thing. These dudes really did.
Yeah, we would need a few more.
I was out there on the street, man, and next thing I know, I saw some white woman.
Extra witnesses.
Yeah.
Or some video footage or some pictures, maybe anything.
All right.
Do you have access to Paramount Plus?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go with one that I just watched. Lala, documentary about Lollapalooza.
Oh, okay.
And how it came to be and how it has faded away and how it kind of came back. And
did you ever get a chance to go to
Never went to a Lollapalooza.
I will tell you, then that'll be great. I don't even have to watch it. I can just tell you my own personal Lollapalooza experiences.
And I'll tell you this, Perry Farrell is an odd guy.
Like he wasn't already.
Wow.
I also love the story about how like they approached Perry and the management about getting Ozzy. Like when it started in the early 90s, like he's too old.
Yeah.
And so Sharon's like, F you, I'll start my own.
Yeah.
There's
Ozfest. And that's cool.
That's
cool documentary about the Lollapalooza.
Yeah,
we'll change pace. Something lighthearted. Something lighthearted for a change.
It's time to make it light. As always, watch us do this live on Facebook or YouTube, 9 a.m. on Thursdays. I play at the same time during my show. Jay plays it at 6 p.m. during his show. And then we always put these out as a podcast on our 104.7.
I'd like to say, if you get abducted by aliens, please have somebody take some pictures or video.
Yeah, man. Get someone to record the thing.
Because we'll make you famous. We're a nationally recognized podcast now.
And maybe they'll make you infamous. Either way, I'm Mike the Intern. That's Jay Stevens reminding you we watch movies,
documentaries,
so you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.